Hi everyone. So if you remember from the previous video, we had started our discussion on electoral reform, and whole of the electoral reform we had decided to break into two videos. If you again remember, we had broken the whole of the chapter into four segments. The two segment has already been discussed. These four segments I am talking about. So what were the electoral reform that were undertaken pre 1996, then what were the reform that were implemented or undertaken in this year 1996, and this year, landmark year 1996 into the electoral reform arena is known for the implementation of Dinesh Goswami, whatever recommendation that had been forwarded by Dinesh. Do you remember we already have discussed this Indrajeet Gupta committee and then Vohra committee, this committee like Dinesh Goswami committee, what were the recommendations of various committees and commission, right? We did not discuss, but at least we reflect to some extent on those kind of committees, right? So out of all those committees that just I blabbered, right, Dinesh Gupta committee's recommendation, most of the moderate recommendation, not the liberal recommendation, but the most of the moderate recommendation that had been forwarded by Dinesh Goswami, right, those were implemented in this year 1996. Now these two segments are pending, and these two segments we will be discussing in this particular video, that what are the reform that were implemented, electoral reform, mind you I am talking about. So what are the electoral reform that were implemented post 1996 until 2010, and then in the second segment of this video, although the fourth segment, right, but for this video this is going to be second segment of the video, that what were the electoral reform that will be implemented or that were implemented post 2010 to 2019. So this is how we are going to approach. So this is going to be discussion on these two reform, electoral reform into these two landmark years, right? This is going to be scope for this particular video. What are these things we already have discussed into the first video, so we are not concentrating here. So without wasting time, let us get into next slide, and let us first of all let us discuss that what were the electoral reform that were undertaken post 1996 until 2010. So first reform that you will see, that is in format of presidential and vice presidential elections. So what reform were undertaken in this area? So the reform that was undertaken in this area was increase in number of proposers. See, this increase in number of proposers we already have talked, but in different contexts, that is in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha election when it is being filed. So this increase in proposer we had discussed into what is this increase, what is this proposer concept. So whenever you are going to file any kind of nomination, whether you are filing nomination to contest election for Rajya Sabha or assembly election or the Lok Sabha election, you need certain number of proposers to propose your candidature, right? So that point we already. So similarly here as well, when a candidate is going to contest election of for president and vice president, he or she, his nomination should be proposed and seconded by someone. So seconded by someone, we are not going to talk about what is this proposer and seconder. In case of president and vice president, we already have discussed, so we are not extending that portion of the lecture. But here in this arena, you will notice that the number of proposers for the election or for the nomination of president and vice president was increased through an ordinance. So earlier you had this 20 number of proposers that was necessary. Earlier number was 20 for the president. If any person wanted to contest the election of the president, his or her name should have been proposed by 20 candidates. So the number of proposers in year 1997 was increased to 50 in case of president, and in case of vice president, the number of proposers until year 1997 was this 5, and that was increased to 20. So that was one reform that was done. And why this reform? Because see, obtaining again the same reasoning that we had applied while increasing the number of proposers for those who are going to contest election of Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha or assembly. Why do you want to increase the number of proposers for any candidature? Because you want कि frivolous filing of जो nomination है वो कम हो जाए. If there are, but just by securing 5 votes or just by securing 10 votes, a person cannot win, right? But at least just to make his name, right, just to bring a reputation that I have also contested this election of president and vice president. So many a smaller party which did not have any chance of winning, they also ensure that their candidate's name is at least forwarded. If not forwarded, they would negotiate. There was no chances at all, but still there are you already know that there are administrative costs involved, the number of candidates, because you have this circular counting into the president's election of the vote, continuous cycle of vote that is counting, and that's why means when you have there is number of increase in number of candidates, then the process of vote counting, you already know into the president election, that how the votes are counted until candidate has not secured 50% of the vote, 50% plus one vote, that person will not be declared winner for the post of president. It is completely different from the type of election that we notice in the first past post system, right? Here in the presidential election, it is the proportional representation principle that is followed, and that's why until a candidate has not secured 50% plus one vote, that candidate will not be declared winner, right? So that is the reason. That is unlike MP's election, where as soon you have secured most of the vote, right, majority of the vote, you will be declared winner. Even if you have secured just 10% of the total valid vote, that will not matter. If your vote is more than the other candidates, you will be declared winner. So that is not the case. So because there is this circular counting, continuous counting, so that's why, to avoid that increasing administrative cost and increasing administrative expenditure, this reform was brought, that unless you do have a significant number of proposers who are ready to say that yes, will be the first person who will be voting, right? So there is no point of having such candidate which could not secure even this number of proposers. That's why, so in presidential election, until and unless you have this number of proposers, you cannot file the nomination. Similarly, into the vice presidential election, so this was one reform that was undertaken in year 1997. Then you do have second is requisitioning of staff for the election duty. So again, what was this reform? So as part of this reform, the people or the employees of the nationalized bank like PNBs or SBI, so then employees of the local authorities, employees of the universities, what kind of universities? So universities which has been founded either by the state government or the central government, or any institution which is being substantially or partially funded by government of India, or see, the point is why staff needs to be requisitioned, because election commission, aside from their administrative machinery, do not have their permanent staff. So they do need, during the election, they do need this pyramidal vertical structure we already have seen. But besides this pyramidal vertical structure of returning officer, DEO, RO, AERO, right, you do have this district election officer. So all this, besides, then at the top you do have chief election commissioner and two other commissioners. So besides this administrative structure, a hell lot of manpower that you will need. So finally it was decided that Election Commission of India, besides deputing other kind of staff, they can requisition people or the employees of these institutions, that is every local authority, members of the university, established either by the center or the state, officials of the PSUs as well, can be requisitioned for a fixed number of time, and then any institution that has been financed by the government of India or state government, right, for the election duty. So that was one reform again that was undertaken post 1996. Then you have this voting through postal ballot. Now what is the meaning of this postal ballot, that you will have to understand. So postal ballot, what is this postal ballot? So postal, by post, so voting by post. Now you already know that how do we vote? So we do vote by EVM. So there is certain category of people, Election Commission of India, ECI plus central government does have certain kind of power. What kind of power it does have? So central government along with the Election Commission of India can create this notified class of voter. What is the technical word? That notified voter, notified class of voter, not individual voter, but notified class it can define, and it can say that this class will be eligible. This class need not to come to the polling booth and vote through the EVM, but this class will be allowed that they can vote by the postal ballot. What is this postal ballot? So postal ballot is nothing, the ballot concept you already know. So this will be paper format of this EVM, and that will be sent to certain category of people who cannot, due to their service. We'll be discussing that what are those category of people who have been allowed to do voting from the postal ballot. So there are certain category of, so what will be the process, how they will be voting by the postal ballot? So whosoever class of people who has been categorized as the notified class by whom? Election Commission of India and the union government or the central government, right? So those class of people will be sent by returning officer. So suppose there are 50 people or 100 in a constituency I am talking about, or in a constituency suppose there are 1000 number. Let us take a hypothetical case that there are 1000 people who are eligible to vote by this postal ballot. Now let us understand that what is the different kind of people or category of or class of people who has been allowed so far, and then we'll be discussing what is the procedure, that how they are going to vote for the election commission. So see, there are three category of just a moment, there are three category of voter that you can see here on the screen. Three types of voter, and this three type, let me issue a warning that this three type of voter or this classification of voters I have created, it has not been created by the election commission. For your ease of understanding I have created. So this is not a constitutional requirement, or this is not that this classification has been created by any statute. So that is a warning, right? Let's be clear, it's not that it is going to be a standard. So if there is any question tomorrow into any of the test series or any of the prelim, this should not be taken into account. Just because something was in textual format and just I wanted to have you guys clarity into the pictorial format, that's why I have put up this. So type of voter, you do have this general voter, then you have this special voter, and then you do have this service voter. Let us try to understand what are these service voter, what is this special voter, and this is general voter. So when I am saying general voter, so all those people or all those class of people who needs to visit this polling booth and they have to type this in EVM, they have to press the button, those people who has to visit this EVM or the polling booth, those people has been put under this category, that is general people like you or me. What is this service voter? So those people who are into some kind of service. So what kind of services? So those people who are into this category, that is they are in any of the services like army, navy or air force, or if they are member of the armed state police force, not general state police force. So general state police, and what is the difference between armed and general state police force? So see, to control, so that is the difference is here, that to control any kind of riot, instead of calling military, at the same time there is a small group that is created by various states. So Haryana does have this armed police force, similarly Bihar does have, similarly other state also has created. So if the general in general category, the official number of police, if a state has, let's take again a hypothetical example, suppose Haryana, right now if I take example, so suppose 3 lakh, there are 3 lakh police generally, but out of these 3 lakh police, Haryana does have 2000 of the police who belong to this category of the armed police. So members of the army, members of the navy, members of the air force, and those members of the armed police force, which may be at the time, what may be if there is a rioting in any of the state. Let us take the example of Rajasthan. So Rajasthan asks the support from the Haryana that, hey Haryana, instead of asking to the center to send the CAPF and other kind of forces or military, hey Haryana, can you help me? So Haryana can choose to send their armed police, right? So army, navy and air force has been given this permanent power that they will be voting through this postal ballot. But as far as this armed police is concerned, armed police will be given this not power but facility to vote by this postal ballot when they are serving outside the state government, and any state government employees as well, if due to any election duty, if they are on, or if they are on any kind of duty, then that is outside the state, in that case those people will also be given what you call this facility to vote by this postal ballot. And along with that government official, their spouses, if they are also residing with them right outside the state or outside the country due to any government project, any of the central government person can be given, assigned some kind of job, and if they are residing outside the country or outside the state, in that case they may also be given option. And these category of people, you will notice, can vote only, so the keyword here is only by the postal ballot and not by visiting this polling booth. There is another category of people that you will notice that has been extended this right, and they also, that class of person can also vote only by the postal ballot, and it is those people who are under the preventive detention. Please understand the difference between judicial, police and the preventive detention. So these people actually does not have committed any crime, but it is just that there is some apprehension that if they reside outside, they can cause any kind of rioting, they can cause, or their life can be harmed. So preventive detention is undertaken by the police, and those people who are under this preventive detention, if you are under the police detention, or if you are under the judicial detention, in that case your right to vote is not there. But if you are under the preventive detention, then you can cast your vote by the postal ballot. So this is called service. This class of not this class, but this class of people is called service voter, and this class of people can vote only by the postal ballot. So that is the thing. So these two classes, special voter we are going to talk about. So as far as general voter is concerned, he or she is going to visit this polling booth, and he or she will have to have voting through the polling booth. As far as these two category of people is concerned, that is special voter and the service voter. The service voter we already have talked about. So these people does have option to vote through the postal ballot. Not does, let me correct myself. This service voter is the only option that he or she does have, that he can vote only by the postal ballot. But this class of people, what are these special voters? Who are these special voters? So you have president, you have vice president, you have governors of different state, you have speaker, you have union council of minister. So these people are called special voters, and these people may choose either to go to the polling booth, or they may also choose to ask their returning officer of the district in which they are elected, they are voter. They can ask that, hey, I do not want to come, or due to any of duties I cannot come to what you call this polling booth, so can you send me that postal ballot? I'll sign it and then I'll send it to you. So that is the mechanism. So special voters are president, vice president, governor, union council of minister, speaker, and besides that, one thing that I did not point out, all the officials on the poll duty have this option. So they do have option. Here the word was only, they did not have any option. These people belonging to the service class, right, these people will have to vote only by the postal ballot. So here the option is missing, but here the people belonging to the special voter, right, that category of people does have that option. So here I hope the differentiation you will have clarity. And besides these class of people, you have people under the preventive custody, he or she also does have. Here again I am pointing out, and this is additional information not related to the electoral reform, but there is every chances that means UPSC is continuously getting unpredictable. So whatever spontaneously information that comes into my mind, I try to put into your mind as well. So that is additional information that the people or the person or the voter who are into any kind of police custody or judicial custody, they are not allowed to vote. But if you are under preventive detention, then you are allowed to vote. So that is one space that is not related to this particular topic. So here the reform that was made was that voting by the postal ballot option was given, that this category of people and this category of people, right. Recently, as I already told you, that election, who does have power? So Election Commission of India plus your central government does have power, that it can create this class of people or class of persons or class of voter. It can equip them with the power that you guys can vote by the postal ballot. So for this Bihar election that has to undergo in this year itself, that is 2020 into the Bihar, right, people of this age, 65 plus years of age, and those under home quarantine or institutional quarantine, they can choose, they can write to their returning officer, say, hey, we are of this age. So these people has been given, these people has been categorized at that notified class, and these people has been given this option that you may choose to not come to this polling booth, and you can directly, means by postal ballot. Now let us understand that what exactly is the mechanism of this postal ballot. So in case of, if any of the, so what is the process? So you have this letter kind of thing, just a moment. So you do have this letter kind of thing where you will have serial number, the similar thing, similar information, all those information that EVM does have. Alongside, you will also have to type, or you will also have to key in all your voter information. then you will be pointing out that yes, this is the party that I am voting for, or this is the candidate that I am voting for. Thereafter, means the first thing that will be done by the returning officer is that once at what stage this returning officer will be sending that format of the postal ballot. So once the nomination has been scrutinized that yes, these are the valid candidate who can contest the election. So once nomination has been scrutinized, after that scrutiny, within the 24 hours, this postal ballots will be designed and printed, and it will be sent to all the eligible people, all the people who are eligible to vote through this postal, or who want to opt by this postal ballot, right? So that is the thing. So returning officer will be sending, returning officer will be posting that postal ballot. Thereafter, these voters, eligible voters, would be marking that this is the party or this is the candidate, after all the all keying in all the information regarding themselves, that which constituency or what is their name, all these things they will be, and thereafter they will be putting it in envelope and will be sending it to the returning officer. And all these things should be completed, means after the nomination has been filed, there are 20 around days that is extended to the people, political class, for the campaigning. So all these things has to be done within the 20 days. This returning officer is sending it to the voter, and then voter will send it back to the returning officer. All these things should be completed in those 20 to 22 days of the time, right? So that is the process, that is the mechanism that is followed, and that is the process of the postal ballot. So I hope that reform you will have clarity on. Let us move to the other reform. So other reform is facility to vote through the proxy. So this reform was brought into 2003. So what is this facility to opt through the proxy? So members of the armed forces on which Army Act apply, those people can choose that they can appoint any of the proxy. How they are going to appoint? So they are going to write again a letter to the returning officer in a prescribed format. Through that prescribed format, he or she, whosoever people is belonging to the armed forces, they will be defining, or they will be appointing that in my constituency, this person, either any of my relative or any of the, means a kind of authority letter that will be issued on behalf of him to the returning officer, that this person is going to vote, rather than me opting, or rather than me going through this postal ballot. A person will be coming to the polling booth, and he or she will be polling on my behalf. So that is the option that has been given, and this has been given only to those people, those of the armed forces on which this Army Act applies. So that is again a reform that has been undertaken in 2003. Then declaration of criminal antecedents and the assets. So who are going to declare these criminal antecedents and assets and liability and the educational qualifications? So this is for those who are opting to contest the assembly election or opting to contest this parliamentary. So what is this reform? So as part of this reform, all those people who want to contest this assembly or Lok Sabha election, they have to declare these four things. First, their criminal antecedents. Of this criminal, what are the things that constitutes criminal antecedents? So you do have how many times you have been convicted, what is the number of years that you had been sentenced, if any, is there any charge, whether you were acquitted or whether you have been fined. So all these things, all the legal things will be part of this criminal antecedent that a candidate needs to file. So that was the first thing. Then you will have to declare assets. While declaring the assets, it's not only your assets but your spouse asset as well you will have to declare, right? Now here one thing has to be noticed, that again while declaring the assets, it's only spouse's assets, not the children's asset. Although there was this provision of declaring the children's asset as well, but by one amendment this option of declaring children's asset has been removed. So along with the spouse, while declaring the assets, you will have to declare assets of yours and what you call spouse asset. So the third thing, so two things are mentioned here. The third thing that you have to declare is, along with asset, you will also have to declare the liabilities. What are your liabilities? Whether you have taken any loan from any kind of private institution, any kind of NBFC or any banking institution. So those kind of, but here while pointing out, or while writing your liabilities into that format, into the that has been provided by the Election Commission, here you need not to mention the liabilities of the spouse, right? So that is the third thing. The fourth thing that you will have to mention is your educational qualification, that what is your so these are the four things that a candidate who is opting to contest this election of assembly and the Lok Sabha, so these are the four things that he or she will have to declare: criminal antecedents, if has been any conviction, number of years of sentence or acquittal, or in past 6 years if there is past 6 months if there has been any charge, all these things he or she will have to declare, and that cutoff is 6 months. Means before conduction of election, 6 months prior to that, right? So that is the thing. So these are this was again a reform that was undertaken, right? So that people and this was why this was undertaken, so to ensure that voters does have right amount of information regarding the people whom they are going to vote for, right? So this was one contention that was, and this was one direction that was done on the behest, or this was one reform that was undertaken on the behest of Supreme Court, where PUCL, Union of Civil Liberties, that had filed the case, and Supreme Court had issued that directive. So this was the thing. What is this change in Rajya Sabha election? So what is this reform? Let us talk about. So this is one reform again. So see, if you have to contest the election of the Lok Sabha, what is the eligibility? So along with the age eligibility and along with being citizen of India, one eligibility that is required if you want to contest the election of the Lok Sabha, that you need to be voter. Voter where? Voter in any of these 543 constituency parliamentary, these are 543 parliamentary constituencies that we do have. So to contest this election of Lok Sabha, you need to be a voter in any of in any of the union territory or any of the state, you need to be voter. So that is one eligibility. If you want to file nomination, or if you want to contest election into any of the assembly, that is any of the state election you want to contest, what is the eligibility? So you need to be a voter in that state, right? Any of the constituency of that particular state, unless you can't be that you are a voter into the Haryana and you are going to contest election in UP. It can't be that you are a voter of Karnataka and you want to contest election, assembly election I'm talking about. In Lok Sabha, it is completely allowed. If you are contesting, if you want to contest election of the Lok Sabha general election, it is completely allowed, right? Does not matter which state you belong to, there is no restriction. But when it comes to assembly election, that is one restriction or disablement, right, that I will say that has been imposed. So this is regarding Lok Sabha and assembly. Similarly, until 2003, there was this option that if you want to, until 2003, this was the disability, that if you want to contest the election of the Rajya Sabha from a particular seat, particular state, right? So Rajya Sabha, Haryana के पास कितने रिप्रेजेंट, सपोज हरियाणा से आप कंटेस्ट करना, फ्रॉम हरियाणा इफ यू वांट टू कंटेस्ट दिस राज्यसभा इलेक्शन, सो यू नीडेड टू बी वोटर ऑफ दैट Haryana only, right? It can't be again. So the similar thing that applies to the election commission, right? Assembly elections, that was being applied into the Rajya Sabha election. If you want to contest on the seat of Rajya Sabha belonging to the Maharashtra, you necessarily needed to be voter of the Maharashtra only. So that was, again a reform was brought in 2003 in which this option was done away with. That no, it is not necessary. Whether if to be a parliamentarian, that is Lok Sabha member or Rajya Sabha member, the similar condition that is applied into the or similar eligibility criteria that Lok Sabha does have, that similar eligibility criteria Rajya Sabha will, as not in terms of age but voter qualification I am talking about. So this option of belonging to a particular state to to contest election of Rajya Sabha, that has been done away with. So that is one reform that was, there was two reforms that were undertaken in 2003 in terms of Rajya Sabha election. So first, that geographical disability, that you needed to be voter of a particular state in order to get elected in the Rajya Sabha from that state, right? So that was done away with. The second reform that was undertaken, that this open ballot, until 2003 this voting of the Rajya Sabha, not voting of the Rajya Sabha, for the election of the Rajya Sabha, when voting was being done, who are the electorates into the Rajya Sabha? It is the state assembly. So when state assembly members were voting to elect Rajya Sabha members, then this closed, secret voting was being practiced until 2003, this secret voting. So in order to bring, and there was many times this cross voting by different parties were giving directly that you need to vote for this particular candidate, but due to finances and various kind of inducement, you already know. So due to the inducement, there were cross-party voting that were undergoing. So to restrict or to avoid this cross-party voting, the ECI brought this reform, and I am saying this reform deliberately because this is a reform when your party is directing that, hey, you vote for that particular candidate that belongs to our ideology, that person subscribes to our party ideology, or he is honest. Now, as a MLA, just because you have, and this was undergoing vehemently, right, that other parties were offering other parties member that if to cross vote, and they were doing, these MLAs were doing, and that's why to avoid this reform was brought, that open voting was. So in order, what is this open, not secret ballot voting, what is this open voting? So at the time, if you are a MLA and if you are going to participating into the Rajya Sabha election, Rajya Sabha member selection, so you will have to show your slip to your party while putting your vote into that ballot box. You will have to show that slip openly to your party whip. Right, so that was one reform again that was brought up in 2000. What is this free supply of electoral roll? So free supply of electoral roll is nothing but this is the duty of Election Commission, that to every recognized party. Who are these recognized party? If you have seen the lecture of the political party, you would be knowing that classification of the registered party, then registered, unrecognized, registered, recognized. So that kind of classification we had created. So these recognized parties, state parties and the national parties are called recognized party, right? So it is the duty of Election Commission of India that during assembly election and during this Lok Sabha election, it will be the duty of Election Commission of India that they will be providing free copies of electoral. What is this electoral roll? So if you have gone to the polling station, you would have noticed that most of the party, not all the parties, but most of the parties representative had that list of that who are the people who are the voters of this particular constituency. If you show them the voter list, perhaps they will be giving you all kind of serial number and everything that you can take into the booth and you can show it, and then you can have your voting. So that is the electoral list of all the people who are the voter. There all the details regarding the voter. So that is called electoral roll. So the electoral roll photocopies all the information. That is the duty of Election Commission of India, that during election. So Election Commission of India's duty is to provide only to the recognized party, not to the all party, right? So if there is any question into the prelim whether it is being electoral roll and the copies and other documents is provided to all the parties, that statement will be wrong, right? So only to the recognized party, that is state party and the national party. What is the next reform? So party is entitled to accept any amount of contribution. Any amount of contribution. Earlier, until, and this was again a reform, and this is a retrograde step. This is not, I'm not going to define it a reform, but yes, the parties were allowed that they can accept any amount of contribution from any individual or any company. Any individual or any company. There is one star here, and the star is that they cannot, political parties cannot accept any kind of contribution from any kind of government company, any kind of PSUs like LIC or BHEL or GAIL. So these from these kind of institution, government companies, right, these parties cannot accept any amount, right, but from any individual or from any company they can accept any amount. Now here there is one restriction, and the restriction is, earlier the restriction was that if any political party is receiving any sum in cash more than 20,000, then they needed to report it to the Election Commission of India. Not report, into the annual statement that they will be giving to the Election Commission of India regarding the income. They will be mentioning the name of that particular company or name of that particular individual, that so and so person had donated us more than 20. So that ceiling, now that ceiling has been lowered in 2017 by a reform, and that is a reform, right? So if any person, now not the 20,000, the 20,000 option has been done away with. Now any individual like you or me, if in cash, if we are, see from the account, why this option has been given in cash? So if you are donating from the account, there will be clarity, right? That person can be traced, right? But if you are donating in cash, so there is every chance that the black money can be accounted in, and to trace that black money, right, this option has been, and that's why this amount has been lowered as well. That earlier all those people who were giving any amount greater than 20,000, then only their name or the other details needed to be mentioned, so that if the Election Commission of India or any institution wants to track, any legal institution wants to track that person, that what was the motive of him donating, what was the source of the income, maybe that due to seek any kind of pro bono. So if you are donating this more than 20,000, suppose every month, to any particular political party in your district, so there is every chance that perhaps you may seek some pro bono from the leader of that political party, and if that leader happens to be of the ruling party, then you can seek more benefits to track, right? And that's why I am calling this step as a reform, that recently 2 years ago this amount of 20,000 has been lowered to 2,000. So now if you are donating any sum greater than 2,000, then in cash I am talking about, then that party needs to, whosoever party you are choosing to donate as an individual or a company, then that party will have to mention in their account to the that will be submitted to the Election Commission, that so and so person like me has donated, or the company like me has donated us more than 2,000, and the number of times also needs to be mentioned. So that is one reform that was undertaken, and this step was undertaken just 2 years ago. Otherwise, from 2013 to 2018 or 2017 rather, a report was to that account or that person's name has to be reported only when he or she has donated 20,000. So that is one reform that was undertaken. Again, what is this allocation of time on the electronic media? Let us try to understand. So it is the duty, again it is the duty of Election Commission of India that now here the keyword that I am going to use, you will have to remember that it is the duty of Election Commission of India to equitably, not equally, equitably distribute the airtime on the national television depending on their size, right? Equitable distribution, not the equal distribution. So depending on the size, depending on the status of that particular party, and what is the depending on the status or size? So depending on their past performance, right? Election Commission of India does have power that on electronic media, how much time a particular, so more powerful the party, more powerful in terms of number of seats that they have secured into the assembly election or the Lok Sabha election. So depending on that, right? So again I am pointing out that there is nothing called equal distribution of time, but equitable distribution of time that needs to be ensured, right, on the electronic media. So that is again a reform that was undertaken post 1996. So these are the list of reform that were undertaken by various agencies, means by, although it was undertaken by the Election Commission of India, but it may be at the behest of a recommendation of some committee that would have given recommendation long back, or it may be on the directives of the Supreme Court, any agency like PUCL or ADR, Association for Democratic Reform, right? They would have filed some kind of PIL. So on those behest, or Law Commission would have recommended some kind of reform, or any of the Administrative Reform Commission or any kind of committee or commission would have recommended. Perhaps at that moment the political circumstances may not have allowed the implementation of those kind of reform, but now we are getting time. So these are the list of reform that you will see, that post 1996 until 2010, these were the recommendations that were implemented. So the first segment of this particular video is complete. All the information that we just discussed, all this information can be found into the textual format, right? Whenever you forget anything, you can always come back to these kind of slides and you can study these, right? So center extend this postal ballot, this slide I did not show you. Center extends postal ballot facility to people above 65 COVID-19 patient under the quarantine, although we discussed this. So all these things that we discussed, right, just now, all these things has been put up here. The new additional information that we did not discuss: if you do not, if the candidate who want to contest the election of the assembly or the Lok Sabha, if they do not declare or if they supply any false information, then that is considered as a electoral offense. And if you are found guilty of the electoral offense, right, that is punishment, that is can be a ground under the Representation of the People's Act 1951, and your membership can be disqualified. If you are a MLA, then you will be subjected to Article 191 and Representation of People's Act 1951, your disqualification I am talking about. Or if you are a MP, the disqualification ground of a MP is mentioned under Article 102 and Representation of People's Act, right? So the elector not declaring or the false declaring of any of these things, it's not that all the people will be declaring all the information, because that is the prescribed format, otherwise returning officer will be rejecting your nomination file. So all the people do declare all the information, but then you may choose to hide certain kind of sensitive information, you may choose to hide some assets, you may choose to hide for the political motives or ulterior motive, you may choose to hide some liabilities, right? So if you have falsely declared anything, that is considered as electoral offense, and electoral offense if you are conducting, then your membership can be endangered, right? So that is the thing, all these things that we just discussed, right? Is there anything left on this particular? No, all these things. Open ballot system, and then domicile requirement was done away with in Rajya Sabha elections, so these 2 points. Then free electoral rolls should be provided, political parties were allowed. So here again you do have this new information. This new information is this additional information that political parties are 100% exempted from paying the income tax, although they need not to pay the income tax, but income returns, as far as filing this income tax return that is concerned, income tax returns they have to file to the election to the income tax officials. They will every year they will have to file this income tax return, so they have to file this income tax return, but they have been given this 100%. Rather, you as an individual or company, if you are donating to any of the political party, this party does have power that they can issue 80C certificate. Those people working, they know the importance of this 80C certificate. So 80C certificate is provided to you. That means that you can seek, you can also seek on that amount that has been, that you have donated, you can also seek what you call income tax exemption. So that is the relevance of this 80C certificate. So with this we are wrapping up the first section or the first segment of this video. Now we will be entering into the second segment of this video, that is the reform that were undertaken post 2010. So the first reform is the restriction that has been imposed on the exit poll. Let us try to understand what is this exit poll. So let us see this into the pictorial format to have a better clarity. See, what are the polls, why the polls are conducted during the election or the before. You would have seen, you would have noticed various kind of media channels conducting these kind of opinion polls or the exit. The two technical words is opinion poll and the exit poll. What is the meaning of opinion? You go to the voter before the election or during the election or post the election, and you seek their opinion that if votes are being conducted, or if vote is conducted 2 days down the line or 10 days down the line, right, what is their likely preference during the voting, which party, which candidate they will be voting. And based on that data, based on question that they have asked from 1000 people or 2000 samples, they will be broadcasting that which candidate or which party is likely to win, right? So if that kind of polling is done pre-poll, then that is called opinion poll. Opinion poll, the technical word is opinion poll. But if that kind of poll is conducted during or the post vote, then that kind of poll is called exit. These two categories will be collectively, either you are conducting any kind of poll during when poll is ongoing on that particular day I am talking about, or if you are conducting that kind of poll that hey, who do you have voted, once the person has voted. So pre-poll you will be asking the question that who is your likely candidate, or who is, means if tomorrow or day after tomorrow or 20 days down the line if there is election. So pre-poll you will be seeking the opinion, and the post-poll you will be asking that who they have voted for during the poll or the post-poll. So here the opinion poll is conducted in this case, and here these two kind of polling is called exit poll. So let us see as per the election commissions of the rule, this pre-poll opinion or conducting opinion poll by various media houses is allowed. There is no legal ban as far as these two. So this exit poll as well I have divided into two parts. The exit poll can be conducted either during the poll on the particular day when poll is ongoing, or if poll has been divided into various phases. So currently you have this Bihar election that has been divided into 3 phases. So either what kind of exit poll a media house can conduct. So the first thing that they can do that on that particular day when poll, so suppose in the first phase the election is ongoing, on that particular day suppose 2 hours election has been done or 4 hours election has been done, some people 50% of the voter has already, and now as a media channel you are going there and asking that, hey, who you have voted for, hey, you have who you have voted for. So in that case what the people will be seeking their opinion. Now media channel does have power, they can influence the voting pattern. So even if either they will be representing the voice of the people, that out of 50% of the voters that they voted, right, out of that 50%, 70% of this 50% which has voted has casted vote in particular favor. So they can influence. If 70% of this 50% is saying that we have voted for a particular party A, then A will be in winning position. So rest of 50% of the people who have not voted, who are yet to vote, their likelihood of voting to this party called A or the candidate called A increases. So conducting this exit poll during the election or during the poll, that has been banned, because there is every possibility that these kind of media reports or these kind of publishment of these kind of opinion or polls, right, there is possibility that the results of election can be influenced. So exit poll, conducting of exit poll during the election, and this during of the exit poll will include all these 3 phases. So either means if first phase election has been done, even then you cannot conduct the election until and unless all the phases of the election has been completed, be it at the Lok Sabha level or be it at the assembly level, until and unless all the phases. Opinion poll you can conduct. Again I am clarifying that the pre-poll polling, that is opinion poll, right, opinion poll you can conduct, but as far as exit poll, what is the difference between pre-poll, this opinion poll and the exit poll? In the exit poll I am again emphasizing that you are asking based on who they have voted, right, you are directly asking that whether you have voted for BJP or the Congress or party A or party B, and based on that you are forming that data and then telling people that this party is likely to win. Earlier you were not aware exactly, it was just that the people that we may vote for this particular, we may not vote for that particular party, but here there is potential that the voting behavior can ultimately be changed, right, and that's why this exit poll, right, cannot be conducted unless all the voting process, voting of all the phases has been completed. So that is what, that there is no regulation on the opinion poll, but there is regulation on this exit poll. So I hope that reform you will have clarity on. Polls are conducted to predict the outcome of the voting based on the voting behavior. Pre-poll prediction based on opinion of voters likable voting pattern is called opinion poll. What is the, all these things has been explained. So that was the first reform that was undertaken post 2010. The second reform, if you want to see, time limit imposed for submitting a case for the disqualification. What kind of disqualification? So suppose any of the member or the parliament or elected member of legislature, if he or she has been indulged into this corrupt practices. What are the corrupt practices that can be indulged, or what kind of corrupt practices that he or she can, elected member of legislative assembly or member of parliament can. So during the election, when election was ongoing, if he or his any of his associate, any of his political activists, any of the his representative has indulged into intimidation of voter, if any has indulged into inducement of voter, if any has done indulged into the bribing of the voter, if you have what you call disturbed any kind of election or any kind of political meeting. So these kind of incidences are, or if you have appealed to the voters to cast their vote on the religious or due to any of the caste affiliation, that hey, I belong to that particular caste or this particular caste should be voting or should not be voting in favor or disfavor of that particular candidate, or in favor of me just because I associate or I belong to your caste or I happen to be propagandist of your caste or religion. So that kind of, if any of these or kind of appeal is made either directly by that particular leader, means MLA, elected MLA, or that particular candidate, or if he or she happens to win and if there is any charges that is proved into the court of law, then what will happen? Then president will be removing that particular candidate. He does fall under the provisions of Representation of People's Act, under which he can be suspended, and president will ultimately be taking decision in consultation with the election commission. So what is the reform in this area? In the reform that is available in this area, that if any winning member who has, means he participated into the election and fall under any of these category, either intimidated or induced or bribed, either, means even if he does not happen to indulge into any these kind of activity directly, if it is proven that any of his political activists, any of his political representative, official representative has actually indulged into any kind of this behavior, then and if in court, if it is established, then the president will be taking decision in consultation with Election Commission of India. So here, whichever court that is taking decision, court will have to complete that process to decide whether that particular candidate is falling under this category or not within 3 months time. So there is a restriction that has been imposed on the competent authority, that they will have to submit that report to the president within 3 months of the time. So that 3 months, that fixing the time, right, that is considered as a electoral reform. All officials included into the corrupt practices. So see, during on the day when voting is ongoing, so it is the duty of these officials, polling booth official, presiding officer, returning officer, right, to conduct free, it is their duty to ensure that the polls are conducted free and fair manner without any kind of influences. Now any of the state government employee, any of the central government employee, or any of the official who is onto this official duty, and if he or she is trying to influence a voter in any manner to vote in favor or to vote not for a particular party, so even those officials will be called to be indulging into corrupt practices. So all the officials also now come under this ambit of corrupt practices, and they will also be punished accordingly. So it is not the political party's leader, winning leader, or this activists, political activists, but all the officials who are on the polling duty, right, they also needs to ensure that free and fair election is conducted. They should also not try to intimidate or threaten on behalf or against any political party, or lewd any kind of, or try to influence the voter in any manner if it is found that will be considered as corrupt practices, right, and they will also be punished accordingly. So all the officials also on the polling duty now fall under the ambit of this corrupt. So that is one reform. Again, what is this increase in security deposit? So increase in security, see what is the security deposit concept? So see, there is some amount, fixed sum of money that every candidate, whether you are contesting election of Lok Sabha, or whether you are contesting election of Rajya Sabha, or whether you are contesting election of this assembly, right, every candidate who is contesting the election, he or she needs to deposit, and that amount will be called security deposit. And this, see, until and unless you secure, a candidate secure a threshold number of vote, threshold percentage of vote that has been polled, right, that candidate will, his security will be forfeited. Let's try to understand that what is that threshold amount of vote. So until and unless a candidate into the assembly or Lok Sabha election secures 1/6 of the vote, let us first try to understand what is the amount of security deposit, and then we'll be discussing this point. So in case of Lok Sabha election, if you belong to general category candidate, you will have to deposit amount of 25,000 as a security deposit, and if you belong to a candidate from the SC and ST category, then this amount reduces to 12,500. 12,500. K represents this 1000. K is representative in denomination. K means 1000. So 25,000 for general candidate, 12,500 for the SC and ST candidate. That is for Lok Sabha election. If I talk about the assembly election, so assembly election, general candidate which was earlier ensure that security deposit earlier was 5,000, now it has been increased to 10,000, and this is the increase that it is talking about here as well. There it has been increased. This is the increased amount, and if you are a SC and ST candidate, then the increased amount is 5,000. 6,000, right? So that is the amount. Now what is this concept? Let us, along with this increase in the deposit, so this amount that I talked about, this is the increase. Earlier, prior to this reform, the amount was very less. Now why this amount has been increased? Amount has been increased again to ensure the frivolous, to avoid the frivolous filing of the nomination. Even those candidates which does not have any kind of mass support, they would file their candidature just to gain popularity into their neighborhood, just to gain the popularity in their society. Because if the amount is in tune of 5,000 or 6,000, what goes, right? Even I can file, I can think, even if even my neighborhood, even if any of my neighborhood is not going to vote in favor, even I can file that case. So just to avoid these kind of people which does not, just for this show of reason if they are filing, so just to avoid that point, right, the security deposit was concept was introduced, or there was increased into this security. Now let us try to understand that what is this security. So security deposit you already know. Now if a particular candidate does not secure 1/6 of, so threshold I am talking about. So if a particular candidate either in the Lok Sabha or the assembly election does not manage to secure more than 1/6, or at least not more than, then at least 1/6 of what? 1/6 of valid votes polled. So if 1 lakh vote has been polled on a particular day in the Lok Sabha, in that particular Lok Sabha, so every candidate, all those candidates which has not secured 1/6, so what will be the 1/6? So the 14 into 6, no, 15 into 6, 16 into 6, so 16 point something, 16,000 something 100. If a candidate does not secure, right, then their security deposit will be forfeited. That amount will not be returned. Only those candidate which has secured more than, out of 1 lakh vote that has been polled on a particular day, all those candidates which has secured this more than 16,000 of the vote, only their security deposit that they have submitted, that will be returned. Other candidates which whose number of vote was less than this 1/6, their security will be forfeited and will be submitted to the Election Commission of India's account. So that is one additional information, right? Next reform, online enrollment in the electoral roll. So now every citizen does have right, that as soon he or she turns into 18 years of the age, he or she can go to the Election Commission of India and he can online enroll himself or herself, apply for the voter card, right? So that is the one reform. Next reform, introduction of the nota option. What is this nota? None of the above option. What is this none of the above option? So suppose in your constituency there are 7 candidates. So when you go to the EVM, I don't know whether you have noticed or not, right? So when you go to the EVM, there will be name that will be each on this EVM interface for all these 17 candidates serial wise, 1 2 3 4, what will be the order we already have understood. Then there are 17 candidates, there will be 18th candidate as well on this EVM, and the 18th candidate will be nota. So if you do not like, if you find that all the people that this list does have, they are not deserving of my vote, their image is not clean, some are corrupt, some does have some kind of criminal background. So if you find that all the candidates are undeserving, then in that case this option has been given. And this is one reform that was undertaken in 2013 on the directions of the Supreme Court. So it is not the parliament initiated reform, it is the reform initiated by the Supreme Court on the directive, by the Election Commission of India on the directive of the Supreme Court. Into the 2013 it was implemented. So after this you do have this 2 Lok Sabha election that has been conducted with the nota option, and mini assembly election. So in the assembly election and in Rajya Sabha election, this nota option is not there. So in assembly election, in this Lok Sabha election, this nota option is there. And you will, if you have not noticed so far, next assembly election or next Lok Sabha election that you will participate, you can notice this nota option. So there is a history of this nota option. This history can be traced from USA, and in India, first time that nota was talked to in, that was in year 2009, that Election Commission proposed to the government that, hey, can we introduce this nota option into our system as well? But government along with the other political party completely straight away denied this kind of reform. Finally in 2013 you will notice that this kind of reform at the behest of Supreme Court will be introduced. So it was year 2013 that this nota option is going to be introduced into India's election, right? Is there any additional information that is available on the nota? Let us see. So yes, there is this additional information. There is a question that I have raised, and the question is, so the year you will have clarity on, right? 2009 ECI initiated, ECI proposed, and finally in 2013 into a PIL that was filed by POCL SC directed ECI to have this kind of reform, have EVM ready with this additional function of the nota. So what if nota registered most of the vote, right? Out of the 18, that 18 available candidate, in which 17 are people, 17 are persons, and 18th is this nota. So out of these, all these 18 vote elect this candidate, if the nota registers most of the vote, like if there is 1000 votes in a constituency, out of that 1000 vote, if 400 is accounted to the nota, and no person a person out of this 17 secures more than this 400 of the vote, so will nota be declared winner and the other candidate will be declared winner, or if election will be conducted again? No, there is no such option, there is no such reform that has been undertaken. Now you again might ask that if it does not miss, if on nota getting most number of vote, if elections are not suspended, that how it can be described as a reform? So let us try to understand. See, we are a maturing democracy. So even this kind of political reform, when in 2019 election commission had tried to introduce, government did not allow, because it ultimately, what is this reflection? As soon this number of, currently if you see, when you have this 2 Lok Sabha election that has been conducted, and let us say for I do not have this quantifiable figure, let us say from 2013, let us say 100 assembly election has been conducted. What is the most number of vote, or what is the percentage of vote that you can assume that nota would have got? Only 2%, 2.03%. None of the election that has happened into the assembly or the Lok Sabha, or no, in any particular constituency, right, nota has not been able to secure more than 2.03% of the vote. So the political cynicism that we do have about the political party, although it is reflected into the media or in our hearts, but when it comes to the actual election, that is not reflected. When you have only 2.03% of the voters that is expressing or that is choosing nota as that, yes, means if this number increases to 7 to 8%, perhaps in Supreme Court there will be any kind of institution like PUCL or ADR that can compel Supreme Court to issue this kind of direction, that hey, Supreme Court, can you issue this directive to the Election Commission of India again, that if there is nota getting any threshold of vote greater than 7 or 8%, let us direct this ACI to suspend the election of that particular constituency and direct political parties to not have those candidates at least, because the very intention of nota is to force political parties to have candidate which does have clean image, who does not have any criminal antecedent, or who do not have any kind of this financial or any kind of this legal claim, right? So that is the attempt. But again, as I already told you, that we are maturing, we are yet to mature. We have not more than 2.03% or 2.5% of the people who have ever voted into any assembly election for the nota. So that is the kind of pattern, and as I already told you, that the day we'll have 7 to 8% of the people started voting for this nota, and if that happens, that is repeated into 2-3 assembly election, you will find that there would be some kind of institution that will be thinking about it. There would be some pressure group, NGO, or various kind of actors that comes into play, and they will be forcing Supreme Court, or Supreme Court can also take suo motu action. So that was one reform again undertaken by ECI, Election Commission of India, on the behest of Supreme Court post 2010. What are the other reform that we can talk about? So introduction of VVPAT. What is this VVPAT? So voter verifiable paper audit trail. Voter verifiable paper audit trail. Let us try to understand what is this voter verifiable. So if you remember the image that we had taken of control unit and the election interface, if you remember that image, I don't know how, from the first lecture, right? So this was the election interface that we had talked in, and this was the control unit that we had talked in. Now you do have this additional equipment, additional hardware that is attached, and that is called VVPAT, and this VVPAT you can see into many of the election center. Now as soon you have pressed this button, the LED is going to blow here, and after that LED that has blown here, you will find for next 7 seconds in this glass window, right, there will be this kind of paper slip that will be popping up, and this paper slip will remain there only for 7 seconds, and then on this paper slip you will find three kind of information. First information, the serial number of that candidate, because every candidate has been ordered into a serial number, right? What is the why they are given the serial number, and what will be the order, that we already have studied. Then his or her name, right? What is the name, and his or her political association, his or her party symbol. So these three kind of, now why this is necessary? It is necessary to just to understand that if you have pressed your LED or button for candidate call E or candidate call B, so here it should be reflected that yes, vote has been accounted for B and not E or D or Z, right? So this voter, and that's why this voter verifiable, voter is going to verify for next 7 seconds. In that 7 seconds he or she can verify. So that is the utility of this VVPAT. Now there is another utility or another usage, another time that, where this VVPAT is used. So randomly at the time when election has been conducted in the evening, all these will be separated, it will be wrapped up, and then it will be submitted into the strong room where it will be stored until this counting day. On that counting day again there will be utility of this VVPAT. Now here, in presence of all the political parties, returning officer will be opening these two equipment, that is control unit and the VVPAT. Now suppose into this EVM, suppose 1000 vote was registered. I am taking a hypothetical case. Now this thing, that is this EVM interface says that out of 1000 vote that this EVM has taken into account, A should have got, because for the candidate A, suppose 400 people has voted in, for the candidate B 500 people has voted in, for the candidate C 100 people has been voted. Now randomly few out of in that strong room, suppose there are 100 EVM machines that is available. Out of that 100 EVM, because counting the votes from this or counting the paper slip from all the VVPATs, all 100 VV, because against 100 EVM you will have 100 VVPAT as well. So counting the slips of this 100 VVPATs is not possible, because if we have to count this 100 VVPAT, we could have shifted easily to the ballot box, but to reduce this time of the counting we have. So just to confirm that whatever number that EVM is suggesting, same number of slips are there. So if C has been, or if B party, there are 500 voters that have chosen for the B, there should be 500 slips there for the B, right? It should not be that here you do have only 300 slips for the B, but EVM is claiming that no, 500 people have voted for this. So just to verify, so there are two verification at the two level, for the voters and for this political party. But here on the counting day, as I already told you, not all the VVPATs are open. Randomly any of the 6 or 7, means all the political parties representative would be there, and they reach at the consensus that out of, okay, if the 100 is the number, 100 EVMs are to be counted, let us take 6 or 7 or 10 random VVPAT, and let us have our satisfaction that whatever number that EVM is recommending, whether same number of slips are there into the VVPAT or not. So that is one reform that was introduced, this introduction of VVPAT, voter verifiable paper audit trail. Now what is the next reform that we do have? Voting right has been extended to the citizens living abroad, but there are certain conditions. There are 3 conditions that has been attached. So all those people who has gone out into any another country for reasons of educational or employment, and if first of all they are not registered voter there, registered voter, if they are not there, right, then and if they have not taken citizenship there, then in these, if they fulfill these 2 kind of conditions, then that person can be given voting rights, that will be called overseas citizen of India, and he or she can be given the voting rights if they apply to the Election Commission of India for the voter. So wherever their passports, whichever city their passport belong, so from that city he can be a registered voter by the Election Commission of India. Next reform, foreign funding allowed. Now this can be, from my assessment, this can't be called reform, but since Parliament has introduced it, right, it is not on the directive of the Parliament. I'll let you know why this Parliament or Assembly, generally it is expected, or generally it is believed that the Parliament or assemblies hesitate to bring any kind of electoral reform, but this is a reform that was brought on its own, suo motu reform that was brought by the Parliament. And why this Parliament has brought this reform, let me tell you. Although the reasons are political, and these kind of reasons should not be aired into these kind of online classes where everybody is going to watch, but let me tell you, in 2016 this reform was brought up that the political parties are now allowed. So in 2016, when this law was brought up of Representation of People's Act, that was amended to accept an FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, was also amended to allow political parties to accept, and accept not only from that particular day on which law is going to come into effect, but retrospectively. So here this story of, there is a story behind this allowing this retrospectively. Why this retrospective step or retrospective application of law was happened in this particular retrospective? I hope retrospective, I hope you may know the meaning of this retrospective. The implementation of any law, if done retrospectively, so the year would be mentioned. So why this retrospective? So in 2014 you will notice that there was case against two major political parties. I am not going to name those political parties. So two major national political parties, there was case against these political parties that these political parties are guilty of accepting foreign funding, which was not lawful in 2014. There was this case in Delhi High Court. So finally these two major political parties brings its hand, surprisingly, for a matter of their own interest, political survival. In 2016 you will notice that these people come together in Parliament, they pass this, they bring this amendment into the Representation of People's Act, and now they will say that retrospectively, and that's why, because in 2014 they have been found guilty, so from 2016 they are bringing the law and having application of that particular law in a retrospective manner. Now political parties are allowed to accept this foreign funding. What is this cap on corporate contribution lifted? So this was, this is a recent amendment in 2013, and this is again, I will not say reform, but then again this has also been brought by the Parliament, so we'll have to call it reform, right? Because we are appearing for administrative, we are not a political activist, we don't want to be described as urban Naxals, right? We have to get into administration. And this is one irony that I see. On the other day when this Manisha's case was ongoing, right, very brutal case, very heinous case, and the administrative brutality, you would have noticed if you did not appear for the prelim, if you are appearing, so you would have noticed the kind of brutality that administration and the kind of incompassionate angle that this administration has, be it police or be it IAS official. I don't know why I wanted to air my opinion on to why we are entering into this ISY, means whether we are going to serve our political master, but I am not getting into this. We'll have lecture on this another day. But here you will notice that the cap I am talking about, let me not deviate, I am talking about this cap on corporate contributions lifted. So earlier, and until in 2017 this reform was brought up, and prior to this 2017 you will notice that the companies, whosoever company, be it private company or be it any other kind of company, if they were choosing to donate any amount of sum to any of the political party, there were two kind of restriction that had been mentioned. The first restriction was that they could not donate more than 7%. They could not donate more than 7%, 7.5% of their net profit to any of the political party or to all the political parties in a clubbed fashion, not more than 7.5%. Let me correct, again I am repeating, not more than 7.5%. And the second precaution that these companies prior to 2017 that they had to take is that whenever they are donating to any of the political party any sum, then they will have to declare it to their dividend shareholders, that hey, this much amount, this much crore of rupees we have donated to so and so political party. Now these two curbs has been lifted as part of political reform that was undertaken by Parliament in 2017, and these two reforms are that now any political parties can, any company, any private company can donate any sum amount if they want to choose to donate more than 75% or even 100% of their net profit of a particular year, they can do so. That is allowed. And this obligation of informing their shareholder that this much amount that we have donated, and there was wide much criticism, and even today on this point, on these 2 points, there is a criticism of the government and the parliament in all, that this is not a reform, this is rather, here you can create a shell company, you can have the, what is the criticism? So shell company can be created, any industrialist can root out his or her black money and he can donate 100% of the profit. And how he can donate? He will donate it in form of cash. How cash? So in sum of less than 2000, every means a block will be created, and every sum that they will be donating in form of cash, they will be donating in form of less than 2000. So when you are donating a sum in less than 2000, then the political party as well need not to declare this amount, right? So there would be no person that would be coming up in the way. And it also, even if a legal company, leave alone, the shell company is not been created, even if a legal company to seek any kind of pro bono benefit from any of the ruling party, they can choose to donate 10% or 15%. In the way, it may be leading to the loss of shareholder, because shareholder ultimately will not be knowing that how much of the profit it is going to the political parties, and they will be getting reduced benefit, because out of the net, if the net profit was 100 crore, and if earlier they were eligible to get according to their share, if they are holding 10%, if somebody is holding 5%, so he or she was eligible to get 5% of this 100 crore or 10% of the 100 crore. Now if the management has decided to donate out of this 100 crore, if the management has decided to donate 50 crore, because now there is no limitation on the percentage of the amount that they can donate. So these people, these shareholder would not know first of all, and now they will be getting amount only out of the 50 crore, out of the 100 crore, 50 crore has already been donated. So that is one loss, and this is the point of contention, and Election Commission as well has criticized this kind of point. Foreign funding allowed, this ceiling on cash donation lowered, this point we all, ceiling on cash donation, so 2000, earlier it was 20,000, right, that could be donated without informing to any authority, that is Election Commission of India. Now only 2000. So this point we already have discussed. Person in jail and jail or police custody can contest the election. Let us try to understand this thing. So here you will have to put this star, not convicted. If person has been convicted, then he cannot contest the election, then he is not. But if person is in jail under the police, let us understand that is different. Under the police custody or judicial custody, means if he or she happens to be under trial, a sentence, he has not been declared convicted and sentence has not been decided. So in that case, he or she is allowed to contest the election. Surprisingly, if you are into the police custody, if you are into the judicial custody, then you are not allowed to vote. Right? If you are in preventive custody, then you can vote by the postal. We just studied, right? If you are into preventive custody, you can vote, but by postal ballot. But if you are in police custody, if you are into judicial custody, you are not allowed to vote, but you are allowed to contest. And this reform as well has been made by the Parliament, none other than the Parliament. So let me tell you this timeline of this reform. So you have these 2 years, 2004 and 2013, that is going to be important in declaration of this timeline of this reform. So in 2004, what happened, that you have this Patna High Court that gave the decision that no, if a person in the police custody and if there is a person in judicial custody, if he is not allowed to vote, then he will not be allowed to contest even. Then in 2013, political parties, group of political parties, for furthering their interest, goes to the Supreme Court and asks to appeal. They appeal against this order of the Patna High Court that, hey, Patna High Court has declared that any person who is into the police custody and the judicial custody, he or she cannot contest the election. You please, Supreme Court, please look into this. So Supreme Court will also uphold this order. Supreme Court will also subscribe to this order and say, no, if you are into the police custody, if you are into the judicial custody, right, you are not allowed to vote. So Supreme Court also upheld the same judgment in 2013. In 2013 itself, into the same year, when Supreme Court did not give a stay on this kind of order, you will notice that the Parliament will sit again together and this is again we are describing as reform. We are appearing for a bureaucrat's exam, right? So Parliament is sitting, and Representation of People's Act again will be amended, and now according to these changes, now people who are into the police custody, judicial custody, means they are under trials. I'm not talking about, here again I am creating the differentiation, I'm not talking about those person who has been convicted. What will be the status of those convicted, right? So those people who has been convicted under Article 102 and the Representation of People's Act 1951, what fate they will be meeting, that 6 years plus period of sentence. So if they have been sentenced for 2 years or 3 years, they will not be allowed to contest the election for period of sentence plus 6 years. So I'm not talking about the conviction, I'm talking only about those people who are either into the police custody or the judicial custody. So those people are allowed to contest the election. So these timelines you need to remember, and these timelines are mentioned into the PDF that you are going to get. So 2004, Patna High Court gives the judgment. In 2013, Supreme Court upholds that order on the appeal of various political parties, and in 2013 itself, Representation of People Act is going to be amended by the Parliament, and this reform will be brought in. Then ceiling on the expenditure, and the ceiling on the expenditure is going to be increased. So in the Lok Sabha election, if you want to contest the Lok Sabha election, and if you belong to the state where the constituency, parliamentary constituency is very large, then this is the upper limit, 70 lakhs that you can spend, and if your constituency is smaller, then this is the limit, 54 lakhs. If you want to contest this assembly election, in the assembly election the upper limit is 28 lakh for those constituency, those state where the assembly constituencies is large, and the lower ceiling is 20 lakhs for those state or UTs where the size of assembly is smaller. So 70 lakh, 54 lakh, 28 lakh and 20 lakh. So these are the ceiling, and these ceiling were increased. Now here you will have to notice that these capping or these ceilings are on individual candidates. Individual candidates cannot spend more than 70 lakh or 54 lakh into the Lok Sabha election and into the assembly. So this capping is, or ceiling is available on the spending of the individual. What amount a party can spend, as a political party, right? How much amount that you will be spending in the election, that capping has not defined, or that capping, there is no legality on that particular capping. Then अगर कोई कैंपेन स्टार कैंपेनर अगर आ रहा है, that point we already have discussed into the first lecture, if there is a star campaigner that is coming to the election to represent or to into the meetings of any of the candidate, then their expenditure involved on that star campaigner, their helicopters, their railway or their meetings, right, that will not be accounted into that 70 lakh or 28 lakh or 54 lakh. So that is whatever amount that any candidate's supporters are spending, that amount will also be not included. So there are three riders, parties, whatever amount that party chooses to spend on this particular candidate, right, if a differentiation can be created that this much amount party has spent into electioneering and this much amount a particular candidate. Then if a differentiation can be created that I did not, as a Lok Sabha candidate, as a contested, I did not spend this much amount, rather my supporters, they spend, they manage this rally, they manage this thing, then that amount will also be not included into your expenditure, your election expenditure. So that is one reform. Next reform, immediate disqualification of the convicted MPs and MLAs. So let us try to understand. You have this article, and this article I continuously emphasize. You have this article 102, 191 and Representation of People Act, that is common for, and it is here, it is at these three places that you do have grounds of disqualification that is mentioned. These two, here you do have disqualification ground for MPs, and here you do have these two grounds mentioned for the disqualification for the MLA. So until 2013 what was happening, that if any member of Legislative Assembly or member of Parliament, if he or she is being disqualified by the Supreme Court on the grounds, on falling in any of the ground that is mentioned into anywhere here, right, that person, that MLA or MP was ultimately, if he is being convicted by the High Court, then he was approaching the Supreme Court, and to file this case into the Supreme Court he was being given 3 months. And in these, if he has filed this case into the Supreme Court against his conviction, from the High Court, then his qualification or his member of parliament, he will continue to be member of parliament and he will continue to be member of legislative assembly. In 2013 the Supreme Court tried to bring this reform, and in 2013 Supreme Court said that no, although you do have every right to appeal against the judgment of the High Court or Supreme Court, but if a sentence you have been sentenced, right, as per the provisions of Article 102 or 191 or Representation of People's Act 1951, you will be immediately disqualified, right? You will stripped of your membership from member of parliament or member of legislative assembly. Thereafter you can go to the Supreme Court, and if Supreme Court do not uphold the order, if Supreme Court gives you benefit of doubt or Supreme Court find you innocent, then you can come as a member again. But until as soon the subordinate court or High Court has given the decision, and if you are falling on any of the ground mentioned into Article 102, Article 191 or Representation of People Act, you will stand as a disqualified, right? Your membership goes, right? And that's why you have Lalu Yadav currently serving the jail, right? He has fallen under this Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, a ground that is mentioned into the Representation of People's Act 1951, right? Against this as well, in 2013 a reform was tried to be brought by the parliaments against this Supreme Court's order that no, the Supreme Court suggestion in 2013 in this case will not stand ground, right? They tried to upturn the Supreme Court's judgment by 2013 ordinance when Lalu Yadav Ji's, right, Lalu Yadav Ji's membership was ongoing. He was being stripped of his membership, right? He had been convicted in that fodder scam for 5 years, and as per directives of the Supreme Court, if any member has been given the punishment of greater than 2 years, then he will stand to lose his membership immediately first, and he will not be able to contest the election for period of sentence plus 6 additional. To save Lalu Yadav, amendment had been brought, ordinance had been rather brought by the UPA 2 government, by the law minister then, I don't know exactly, but I would not even like to, I do remember, but I would not like to recall him, right? So here that ordinance has been brought, and that ordinance in a dramaful manner had been torn down by our youth leader Sri Rahul Gandhi ji. Right, Prime Minister had brought, and there was much controversy on that ordinance as well. So right now the position is the Supreme Court order is being upheld, and if any member is being disqualified on the any of ground mentioned in any of these articles, then his membership will go immediate disqualification. So these are certain reform that was brought after 2010, and with this we are wrapping up these lectures with these 5 MCQ. You have, let me show you. So this is first MCQ. Just so these are the PDFs, right? These are the PDF and the textual format, whatever we discussed into the textual format, these limits that has been pointed out, right? So all these things we already have discussed, right? So these things you can study when you will, as and when you will get PDF, whenever you tend to forget the information that we discussed, right? So these information you can read. So this is the first MCQ, second MCQ, third MCQ, fourth MCQ, and the fifth MCQ. So these are the 5 MCQ that I expect you to attempt until we come up with the next lecture on the anti-defection. Till then, bye bye.